Hi, Elsie.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, fine, fine. I'm really glad to have you on. Now, if you don't know, I have the brilliant Elsie Akinsanya on with me. Fun fact, I have known her since I was 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Truth.
And so I'm going to talk about her credentials as we go through the episode. She is a beast. She has amazing, amazing experience. You're going to hear her talk a bit. But today, we're going to be talking about something that is really interesting. What are the decisions you should be making at 40? What is it that you didn't know at the age of 40? And Elsie, let me start with a very quick story, okay? When I turned 40, I was a chief marketing officer. And honestly, I thought I was queen of the world. I have to be really honest. If you told me at that point in time, you need to be planning for your next chapter, you need to be thinking through what the next chapter looks, I would have told you, please, please, please go sit down somewhere. Do you know what I mean? But I have realized that that was a really foolish way of thinking. And so my question is this. At 35, at 40, you're in the middle of the growth phase, right? And you're doing the next role, you're being promoted, you're in the next market as I was, you're on to the next challenge. You feel really young, you feel like you're in motion. And then one day you realize that actually the decisions you're making now are not career decisions, they're actually life decisions. Did you think at all like this when you were in your 40s? Or was it just me being super naive? Let me know.
So to be fair, I don't think it was just you. If I'm honest, I wasn't planful at 40. I was, getting promotions. I'd actually just joined City at the time.
Mm.
So I had, 15 years behind me already in the HR world, in, Quintiles and Fidelity International and all sorts of, great, great companies. So I knew the only thing I knew for sure was that I didn't want a corporate career forever.
Hmm. Okay.
So, quick story. I remember I worked in Canary Wharf at City for over a decade. And I remember at some point in my career seeing this older, and I say older, she's probably the age we are at now. Then she seemed older. But I don't know her age. I never spoke with her. And I remember seeing her, and, my commute was always London Bridge into Canary Wharf on the tube, etc. Because who drives to work? And I remember thinking, I do not want to be doing that when I'm that age. That's all I knew. I knew that I didn't want to be on somebody else's clock
Hmm.
when I was older, but I didn't put a time to it. I didn't put an age to it. I just knew you know how you look at people and you think that's what I want to be like when I grow up.
Right. Right.
That was what I didn't want to be when I grew up. That was all I knew. So it wasn't just you. I had the thought, but I wasn't planful about it. Is the truth.
So it's not just me, which I'm happy to hear. But I mean, let me ask you a different question that's related to what we're talking about, right? As you mentioned, you have and have had a very, very successful career in HR. You have been in leadership rooms at the highest levels where decisions about people's careers are being made. Give us a peek behind the scenes. Are you guys having conversations about this in those rooms? I just recently heard a story about a friend of mine who said that she was told that there was a conversation about her because she was in her 50s, right? So she's thinking she's very vibrant and still very dynamic. And behind the closed doors, they're talking about, winding down her plan in the
Ooh.
organization. So please give us a peek behind the scenes around that. Do organizations often have a clearer view of a leader's runway than the leader does themselves?
Hmm. So here's my take, and this will always be my take. And I'll give you an organization's perspective, and I'll give you my take because I
Okay.
think one of the reasons I've managed to build a career in HR well is I've never been afraid to speak truth to power. And so when it's not right, and I'll call it. So in theory, organizations like to think that we have these plans and we put people in these talent categories and we plan our organizations and our designs. We put people into boxes and slots. But my genuine view around good HR conversations and good leadership, forget HR actually, good leadership is, are you having these conversations with the individuals? Because it actually impacts them. So let me tell you what organizations are doing that a lot of people don't know enough about and should. So organizations are always looking at what's the talent that we have. And actually, as part of that, they are categorizing people and giving you a talent designation. So you'll have a talent designation of, oh, this individual is promotable. We see them being promoted to the next job and maybe the job beyond that. So you're categorized as a promotable individual. This individual is a subject matter expert, which means, right, this individual is great, but they need to stay in their lane, right? They need to stay as an SME because they don't have breadth. And or this individual's a high potential and actually we could really flex them in different ways. I know they're in finance today, but actually they could be not just a CFO, but they could be a CEO in the future, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have different talent categories, and a lot of people don't know that those conversations are happening about them in different rooms. That's why sponsorship is super important. We'll come to that, I'm sure, at some point.
Yes.
But it is a fact that most, especially large organizations, do that on a very cyclical schedule. So that's really important to know. Succession planning is the other thing, right? That most organizations do. And again,
and these are not the same thing, please. Let's be very clear.
Absolutely not the same thing. Absolutely very different things. So if you decide that, Uche, somebody decides that you are promotable or even a high potential, they're going to start to track your career. And when opportunities open up, you've got a really good manager, a really good sponsor, they're going to talk to you about those opportunities because behind closed doors, somebody's decided that you're a high potential or you're promotable, right? If you are not, and somebody's decided that you are, a subject matter expert, trust me, you're never going to get that call.
You're not moving.
You get the call if it's in your line. You're never going to get the call if it's somewhere in a different space completely, because they're not thinking of you that way.
Wow. Okay.
So completely different. Succession planning is a different thing. It's aligned because, you want to have your high potentials in succession plans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you will also have people who are subject matter experts in succession plans, especially if it's a specialist area. You'll have them, right? So it's, again, a very cyclical activity. Good companies do it really fluidly. Not so great companies do it on a schedule, but it's done. And it's done, again, without talking to people, which I always feel is a view. And succession plans look at immediate, if you get run over by a bus, that terminology I hate. So every organization I've gone into, I've changed the narrative to, if somebody won the lottery, who would we put in their place? Because why do you want somebody to be run over by a bus, for goodness sake, right? So let's talk about if they win the lottery and they don't need to be here, what are we going to do?
I prefer that as well, by the way. That's a much better way to put it.
100%. But you think about the immediate, you think about 2 years' time, you think about 5 years' time. That's your succession pipeline. And then obviously, in theory, again, there should be development plans that ensure that people are prepped so that when those opportunities come up, they're ready. Yes?
Can I link this to you? You made a very important point around sponsorship, and I want to ask two questions, right? I think many women, or you may correct me, but many women assume that as long as they have really strong performance, that the runway continues, right? That they're going to continue to get promoted, they're going to continue to get opportunities. But you talked about the importance of sponsorship. So can you sort of link these two things and have a conversation around that?
Yeah, sure. Look, I define sponsorship very simply as a sponsor is the person who speaks for you in the rooms that you don't have access to. It's really that simple, right? Is a person who mentions your name in places that you're not present at, is the persons who opens the door for you and ensures that you have the ability to step through that door in a way that is really powerful. And sponsorship for me is what every individual needs, women especially. So, and again, here's my own personal view. Oftentimes we think that sponsorship has to come from somebody who looks like us. So another woman or somebody in your train track. No. Sponsorship can come from anywhere as long as that individual genuinely believes in you. Because a sponsor is spending their social capital on you, right? So for somebody to expend their social capital on you, they are taking a bet on you. They're putting their own brand on the line on your behalf. That is a gift that you should never, ever undermine. Your performance will only get you so far.
Right.
If I use, I'll use a financial services career ladder. You'll get promoted from analyst to associate, from associate to VP, maybe even VP to SVP on the basis of your performance. At that point, the game changes because you are a director of your business group. You're not just a director in your little team, or you are a director of the business group. So I led promotion conversations for the global Treasure and Trade Solutions franchise at Citi for directors and for managing directors, right? Your ability to be promoted from an SVP to a director, your performance is a given, right? It's
You
the
must have
basic.
that.
It's
Yeah.
the everything else is built upon that. What level of exposure does this individual have to multiple stakeholders, both within the business and outside of the business? What is this individual doing that is not directly related to their job, but is giving them exposure across the globe? What is this individual doing for our communities within the organization? So before I became a director, I was a co-chair of the diversity network at Citi in London. That just gave me a level of exposure that nothing else could have, because my footprint was all over well before I got promoted. So there's something about exposure, but there's also something about individuals who will take a bet on you at that point in time. I was very fortunate to have super sponsors throughout the time that I was at Citi, and I will say, hand on heart, that made a huge difference. And then being promoted to MD, that is a game changer in terms of the process. Wild. So yeah, performance is baseline, exposure, sponsorship, community impact is what elevates you to the next level.
I'm sorry, Elsie. I'm gonna have to stay here for a second because I'm sorry, because I have had people ask me this question so many times. So I just want to stay here for a few more minutes, if you don't mind. Again, I'm gonna bring the conversation back to women for a second, okay? I think that many women I speak to who are mid to senior level execs are really uncomfortable around, I guess, what you're describing as visibility, exposure, right? The second question I get a lot is, and it sounds so basic, but how do I find a sponsor? Because let me explain what I mean. You said a sponsor could come from anywhere. They don't have to be a line manager. It could be, someone else, right? So how do you go about building that relationship in order to have the sponsorship? Obviously, performance being the baseline, as you said. So I want to sort of explain those two things because there are just so many women who are like, look, I don't want to do the politics. I just want to keep my head down and do the work. I don't, want to have to start chasing visibility. It gives me the ick. So, and then the second question is like around the sponsorship, how do I, outside of my line manager, for example, build those relationships that lead to sponsorship, I think is the second one. If we could just spend a couple of minutes there, because I know people want to know the answers.
So I'm just going to say all of what you've described was me. Gave me the ick.
Still me, by the way.
Honestly, gave me the ick. I wasn't one of those individuals who, pick me. I definitely wasn't one of those individuals. However, I chased the things that really lit me up, right?
Okay.
And I went for things that I was passionate about. And in doing those things, I then interacted with people who were also passionate about these things, but because they were so senior, didn't have the time, didn't have the bandwidth, didn't have whatever to do. So I was doing the doing. And so it enabled them to say, she's doing these things. I want to be part of what she's doing. And that led to sponsorship. So I will always talk about being your authentic self because frankly, and you will know this, as you get more senior, you can smell it when people are just trying to get in your face.
Yes.
For the sake of it. We all know when, we are being sold something, right? And nobody wants to be sold something. But actually, we all want to do things that light us up. We all want to do things that give us purpose. We all want to do things that give us impact. I always talk about what will people say about me when I'm no longer here? That's really important to me. So the way I can only share my experience, but the way I've seen sponsorship work really effectively and impactfully is when you are aligned with a sponsor on something that matters. And it could be a work project, by the way. It could be, mine just happened to be, I was doing lots of stuff for what was called City Roots at the time on the diversity issue. And I actually led our first Black History Month at City. And they still use that template till today where, you walk into the building and on all of the boards, you've got information about Black people of history in the UK. And we have that throughout the month of October. October is Black History Month in the UK, throughout the month of... But that gave me sponsors across the bank of people who wanted to do something but didn't know what they wanted to do with this. But it could be a project. So I did I was doing a piece of talent work in my role, and the CEO of the business, because it was something really close to his heart and he wanted talent acceleration, he became a huge sponsor. He became a phenomenal sponsor because that was something he was really genuinely interested in. I would have, I kid you not, I was an SVP at this time, like literally way down I would have one-to-one meetings with this guy and we would go through line by line who does that? But so whatever it is that you are doing, do it well, back to performance being the baseline, but find individuals and that will open doors for individuals who genuinely are interested in those things. But don't let those opportunities pass you by. Because as women, the other thing we do is underplay our contribution, right? It's underplay and underserve what you have done and let somebody else take
the glory.
the glory because you think they're more senior to you or but you did the work. So if you did the work, stand up and be counted. It's your work. Own it and have the conversation and be courageous. Like there's no substitute for courage in corporate world. No substitute. None.
No, I mean, that's the one thing I would absolutely keep reminding people that there's no reward for being a wallflower. That you have to be counted and you have to put yourself out there for sure.
Completely
Wow.
agree with you.
Okay, so shall we shift gears for a second?
I'm here for you.
All right. So you were at City for quite some time. You were at the most senior levels. You know, you were at the most senior leadership rooms.
Yep.
You were well known as well, global roles, everything. And then you decided that you wanted to leave. So what made you decide that? Can you talk to us a little bit about what you were thinking?
So I will say, I've worked in 6, 7 different organizations, and City was the place that I worked in longest. Nearly 12 years. And I grew up there. I'm sure there is a part of me that will always be cityfied.
Yeah.
But truthfully, I had just been appointed as the HR head for emerging markets. So that was all of Africa, the Middle East, and the Levant countries. And joyfully, I had the job when Russia invaded Ukraine, and I had both countries under my remit at the time. So fun times for me. However, I realized, well, a couple of things happened.
Okay.
One was I was to move to Dubai. In fact, I had moved to Dubai because Dubai is our emerging markets headquarters for City.
Okay.
I had moved to Dubai, and at the time, my family was still based in London. And I remember vividly sitting on the breakfast bar with my husband one day when I was back, and him saying to me, "And we're not going to make it if you're not here." My husband is my biggest cheerleader, right? He is the wind beneath my wings. He's everything. And so for him to say, this isn't going to work for us as a family, I knew I had to pay attention. So strike one, right? Strike two, I had been headhunted quite aggressively by a DFI, development finance institution based out in Africa. And their purpose to me was nothing short of impactful, important, game changing in the African continent. And I wanted to be part of that. And so those two things coincided with me also feeling that it was time at City. And I vividly remember telling my CEO, who was the head of emerging markets at the time, that I felt like I was giving 80% of myself. And I vividly remember her words. She said to me, "Elsie, your 80% is probably equal to other people's 110%.
Yeah.
I will take your 80% every time." And I remember saying to her, that's just not me. I'm not waking up excited anymore. I need to do something different. So there were a number of things that happened all at the same time that led to me leaving City.
I was just going to say that people assume, first of all, that looking from outside, right? Here you are, you're at, the pinnacle of your career. You're also an expat. And I think a lot of times, at least in my experience, people look at you as an expat and they're saying to themselves, like, you're so lucky. But they don't realize all the things that come with it. I don't, it's not to sound like a victim, you know what I mean? But when you talk about the impact that had on your family dynamics, I happen to know that you have a really close knit family. I think those are some of the things that people don't understand in terms of what comes along with moving to different countries to take on opportunities that we really believe we want and deserve.
Yeah. 100. I mean,
Yeah.
my best friend at the time, she actually said, I think you're crazy. Like, they're offering you tax-free, my darling, US dollars. You are living, Dubai. Everybody wants to live this is when everybody wanted to live in Dubai, right?
Right.
How are you doing this? In fact, I'm sure a few people still think I'm crazy, but
Yes.
you make decisions that serve you ultimately, right? And it goes back to that courage piece. You make decisions that serve you because you are the one who's going to live with the outcome of those decisions.
And I think the other point was, going to work for a DFI, an organization that had purpose that really resonated with you, and also going to work in Africa. Can I ask, I mean, after many years of working in the UK, did you weigh the risk around that? I mean, the purpose, connect, tick, get it. But were you at all concerned about the idea of going to work in Africa at all? Or were you really excited about the potential of moving back home?
Yeah, I was super excited. I have to be honest, because I've never worked in Africa, never. Like, I moved to England when I was 19. I just graduated, literally graduated one day, moved to England the next. I've never worked on the continent. So for me, it was something that I really, really wanted to do. Might have been a bit naive, if I'm honest, because I didn't think about, it's going to be dangerous, because I don't believe that narrative.
Correct.
And maybe because I had my foundational years in Nigeria, I don't believe it's dangerous, it's this. Of course, I know stuff happens. We all know stuff happens, but I was more excited. And did I think about the work culture? Because I heard so much about the work culture. But for me, that was part of the challenge. Part of the challenge for me was, I am going to go there and make a difference. What's the point of going to a job that you're just going to do what you've always done? That's slightly pointless in my view. So no, I was super excited.
So tell us what happened next, because I looked at your LinkedIn profile. It's not on there.
You don't see a DFI on there, do you? So, right. So, I think this is a story worth telling.
Okay.
Because there are lessons, you sit after the fact and you reflect. So all was done, contract was signed, medical was done. I was 3 weeks from flying to I was supposed to start the job on your birthday, actually. Yes.
Don't go there.
I literally was, because my son's birthday is the 29th of May. And I said, I have to be in England on that day. I will leave the following day and I will start, in June. And so 3 weeks before, I look at the org chart in the organization. Now, arguably, this is something one should have done as part of the due diligence process. So I'm going to own that. I'm going to own that. And I'm going to own that I didn't do that. And I see that all of the direct reports to the CEO, front office, were executive directors. And the role I was going into, and I think legal and one other role, were directors. So I phone him up and I'm like, can you explain this to me?
Being the CEO, or this is a headhunter?
No, I phoned the CEO up. I'm like, mate, because at this point, this was 6 months on, because obviously I had notice at City, blah, blah, blah. So notice was finished. We, every time CEO came into London, we'd meet for dinner or we'd meet for drinks. I was already, I was already ready. Like, I had people in the company already say, we can't wait for you to come. And, I was ready. I was 3 weeks from starting. So I call and I say, help me understand why this is the way it is. And the conversation, not to drag this out, but the conversation was basically, front office people are EDs, back office people are directors, and I'm not going to change that. And I was like, okay.
Like, no negotiating.
I'm leaving an MD role at a global institution to come to your much smaller DFI to do something I want to do, by the way, but we're not doing this. No, we're not doing it. So I said, okay, well, let's have an elegant solution. I proposed a solution because, as I said, it was my fault. I should have checked this much earlier in the game, and I didn't. So I said, okay, how about we do this? My probation period is 6 months. How about we look to doing it in 6 months' time, but you will put it in writing and we revisit it once I've passed my probation. So that way you get 6 months free of me doing whatever it is you need me to do, but proving myself. And then at the end, we both go to the board and say, actually, based on all of these things, here's what we want to do. No, I'm not having a conversation with the board about this. This is what it is. And I said, very good. And here's my decision. I'm not coming. And that was, that was why I didn't go.
Was that, sorry, I just have to, was that in one phone call or was this
No. It
series
was
of phone calls?
over. It was over a couple of, and then, you know, of course, the search firm got involved.
No, I'm going to come back to that. This decision, like the first time you spoke with the head, was he pretty adamant, like, no, we're not changing it? Or did he understand where you were coming? I'm just trying to understand the dynamics of the conversation.
It's you're hearing one side of the story, and obviously there are always two sides to every story. So I want to be fair here. I think he had been doing something, I don't know, similar, and having to go back to the board with a decision around something like this in the past. I think he had the scars from that. So I think there was a little bit of trauma going on. So I want to be fair in explaining this. But I think I feel like I offered a really elegant solution that would ensure that the board would feel comfortable with, 6 months in, this individual's proven themselves, this is where they came from, blah, blah, blah. So you wouldn't have to do it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just a hard, no, we're not doing that. And I just thought, fine. And the relationship of an HR executive and the CEO, I genuinely think it's sacrosanct. I feel that I am their safe space. I am the place that my CEOs can come to and melt down. And I put them back together and I send them back out.
Yeah.
They're safe with me. And my relationship with them has to be one of a trusted advisor. Like, I will say to even my CEO that I work with now, I don't think that's how we should do this. If that's the end goal you're looking for, how about we do X, Y, and Z? Because that's the relationship. That's what you hire me. That's what you pay me for.
Yeah.
Right? So when already I got the sense that this person is looking for somebody they can tell
what to do,
but not co-create solutions with, that's not a space that I know I'm going to thrive. I need to be in a space where my voice matters. And I've earned that. I'm not going to go and work for or with somebody who, as their starting point, is already deciding no, without a discussion. I just knew I wasn't going to thrive there.
So your headhunter got involved, and I guess the conversation was trying to find some sort of compromise.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds that you were very clear in your mind what your non-negotiables were in terms of what you were not willing to accept. I mean, what was that whole process like in terms of trying to find, a compromise, and how did it end up becoming, okay, walking away from this?
I came back to the table pretty quickly from saying, you got to do this now, to saying, okay, let's do it in 6 months' time. That was not ideal for me, but for me, it was a longer term strategic view, because I genuinely felt when you have the benefit of my time, my insights, my experience, you'll know why doing this is the right thing to do. So
Right.
I was willing to compromise 6 months on that. And so both the headhunter and interestingly, even the person who was leaving the role because he was retiring was such a sponsor. I can't tell you.
Wow.
I'm still in touch with him today. Still in touch with him. Such a sponsor. And even he was like, yeah, Elsie, I'm not sure this is going to go over the line. And I said, you know what? And that's fine. And that's fine. But then it's not for me. I was okay. What's really interesting on this part of the story was when I told my ex-colleagues at Citi, both the CEO of the emerging markets and my boss, both of them said, come back. Your job's still here. We haven't advertised it. Come back. We'll just treat this time as a sabbatical. But going back to my why I left Citi, that hadn't changed. And so they said, okay, if you're not ready to come back now, make a decision now. We'll advertise your job. Before we make an offer, we will come back to you. And if you have changed your mind at any point, come back. And I have to give them credit. Both of them separately called me the week that they had finished the interviews. And they both said, Elsie, we found someone. If you want your job back, we will not make the offer. This is the time to call it. So Citi will always have a part of my heart for that, if nothing else, for that.
Okay. Two points I want to make here is that on both occasions, I think, well, let me just say this to you, that you truly showed what your values are. Okay. The first one, and I want you to speak on this as well. The first is that you decided that this is where I belong, i.e., this is where I should be coming into the organization. This is a value I have to offer. And if it's not that, then it's not the right opportunity for me. Okay. I think that 90 of the people would have said, I've decided to leave my company, I've left. This is the opportunity in front of me. This is not the best situation, but you know what? Let me at least get my foot in the door. So that's the first one. I mean, what gave you the confidence to just say no and stick to the belief that you have in terms of what you have to offer? The second part is, here's an organization that really adores you, respects you, sees the value in you, the value that you're talking about, right? And you also know for yourself that my time here is done. And yes, this would be a safe segue out of this whole situation that wasn't expected. I still say no. I like, I bow down because I think it takes a lot of courage to make those two decisions for obviously two very different reasons, but it still comes back to, this is the belief I have in myself. These are my values. This is what I believe, and I'm going to stick to that.
So let me answer
You said,
the first one. I don't know. You know, when you make decisions in the moment, I'm not sure how intentional. I'm not sure that I gave it that level of analysis. I just knew my worth. And I'm not leaving an MD role in a global institution where I'm not doing that to go and be a director somewhere. I'm not doing that. I just wasn't going to happen.
Well, Elsie, don't we tell people, well, I don't know, but haven't you given advice in the past that sometimes you have to step down to come back up, and sometimes you have to take a lateral move?
Yeah, that was 15 years ago, Chenna. I've been doing this gig for like 30. I'm not doing that now. Mate, come on. I've paid my dues. I've paid my dues. Okay, let's go to that point you make, because it's a valid one, and I don't want to dismiss it. It is a really valid point. 10 years ago, I probably would not have made that decision.
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, I definitely wouldn't have made that decision, right? Because you're chasing different things at that point. I had school fees to pay, putting 2 kids through private school. It's not cheap. Look, so I had stuff that I had to think about in that runway, which meant you make different decisions. Yes. And I wasn't through it, by the way. I still wasn't through it at that point in time when I made this decision, but still, I knew that, and I knew I was starting off on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
And you can't do that.
Overcome
Not
that.
at this level.
Yeah.
Not at this level. You can do that earlier on in your career because you can pivot in a very different way. Not when you are at this level. It's just, I think, is such a significant step. And by the way, I had lots of people who said, just do it. Just do it for a year. Do it for 18 months. I did have that advice. And like I said before, it's important to have advice, but it's important to have the courage of your own convictions.
Yes.
Go back to your second question, which was why didn't I go back to City? And honestly, it goes back to, I knew why I left. None of that had changed. I wasn't waking up excited. I wasn't waking up thinking, right, this is what I'm going to go after today. This is what I'm going to do this. I'm going to deliver on this. I wasn't waking up with that anymore. And I just feel I feel it's wrong to be earning money and not doing stuff. I do. Yeah. That's just me, right? If you're paying me money, you need to get value for money. And it wasn't.
No, listen, I completely, and I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because I remember a few years ago, I went to work for one of the tech companies, and the minute I walked in the door, I knew it was not the right place for me, right? And there were signs, I think, similar to what you're saying, like there were signs all through the process where I was just like, I'm not sure, but decided to do it anyway. And a few weeks in, I was like, all the red flags are like in my face right now. And now I need to figure out what to do. And, I was there for 12 months and then moved on. But if it's not right, it's not right. And if the signs are there from the beginning that it's not the right opportunity, that people should listen to that and not force it, right? It just doesn't work out, even if you choose to do the easy thing.
It doesn't serve you. And I'm done doing things that don't serve me.
I think that you understand that once you hit a certain age and a certain level of maturity, I think that actually it's not that deep.
Yeah.
You don't have to, But what do you think? Okay, so now you've made the decision not to pursue the DFI thing anymore. Doesn't serve you. Also decided not to go back to City. And now what? Where are you? Like, once those decisions are closed, how are you feeling? Tell me about that.
Oh,
Because it's one thing to make the decision, it's another thing to be like, and now what?
and now what? And now what? What are we going to do now? So, one of my favorite people calls it my fun employment period, and I love the way she positioned it, because in the initial was, right, I'm going to travel, I'm going to do all the things I didn't get to do when I was working. That lasted about a month and a bit, and then you're like, okay, it's now June. What are we going to do? And this is when the lessons of transition really started to land with me. What have you built that is going to serve you in this season or not? And then I realized I hadn't built. And so there was nothing to serve me in this season.
Just explain what you mean by that, please. When you say what have you built, what do you mean exactly?
And so I had a toolkit full of corporate experience. Yes. There isn't an organization you can throw me into that I won't do something impactful. But actually, if it meant starting up something for yourself, how do you do that? I hadn't done that because this was not the plan. The plan was to go from one job to the other. So when I was started to think about, okay, can I just be an independent? I hadn't built that toolkit for myself that allowed me to be an independent. So, for example, when you're in corporate, you have an ecosystem, a support infrastructure around you, right? You've got your EA, you've got your PA, you've got somebody managing your diary, you've got somebody gatekeeping lots of people from you. You've got, you want a deck done, stuff just happens around you, right? You're directing it all. You don't have that when you're an independent. You're basically on your own. So I hadn't built that toolkit for that.
Right.
I hadn't built a business development toolkit. So when you're in corporate, the work comes to you. I mean, if anything, you're trying to minimize the work that comes your way. But when you're an independent, you are finding the work. You are looking for the work. You're packaging yourself. You're presenting yourself multiple times to multiple people in multiple ways. And I wasn't ready for that. And hence, I knew that I wasn't ready for the transition out of corporate. I needed time to build that toolkit because I hadn't built it. I hadn't built anything that would sustain me beyond the corporate world. And that was a lesson in that season. And that was also what made me think about, okay, it's time to go back. Might not be forever, but actually that allowed me to start thinking longer term beyond the next role. And that really is where my whole program around transition, training, development happened.
Yeah, because you started a whole business. Was it during this period that you started this whole business around the transition period?
It was the experience of that led to me creating a program around transition coaching for senior women in particular. And I ran actually a day's workshop on it for a group of women. And actually it's one of my offerings for senior women is transition coaching. What does next? It's called So What's Next, right? What does next look like? Because next will look like very different things for so many of us. But we have to define it on our terms and have to prepare for it and have to be intentional about it. But it was the lessons in that season that really made me think about there is something here that we're not all doing because it can't just be me. It can't just be me.
And I mean, let me ask a different question then. I mean, if you go on social media, you'll hear this a million times, like you're not your title, you're all this other stuff. But the reality is that, especially if you've been in senior leadership for so long, it is part of who you are. I'm not saying it's who you are, but it's part of who you are. When you were going through your own transition, did that feel some kind of way to you? Did you feel a sense of loss, or were you never really so connected to it that it didn't matter at the end? Outside of losing the infrastructure,
It
what
mattered
else was
hugely.
different? Okay. Yeah.
Look, I think we
And I
can.
appreciate your honesty. Thank you.
Yeah. It mattered huge. It was the things that you don't even notice. You don't notice that you can tap into people in multiple jurisdictions in different ways and they answer you because of your yes. So I remember saying to somebody asked me how I felt in that period, and the word I used, and it's very true, was untethered. And I felt untethered. Like when a ship's just drifting in the ocean and there's no anchor on. That was how I felt. Because yes, I'm more than the sum of the job that I do, the title that I have, and all of those things. But it is a part of your identity.
Sure.
And you have to start to think about, who am I outside of all of these things? And that was the birth of So What's Next for me. I did. I look, and, you know, about to people who say, yeah, you know, it's not, it is part of who we are. The reason you have access to CEOs of 5 different companies is because you're a CEO today. Let's just call it what it is.
Right.
And let's be honest about it. The other thing that it taught me, because I am a relationship person, I am the person who my relationships are important to me. I don't have a huge network.
Yeah.
People that I hold them dear. And I will not let go unless somebody makes it obvious that they want
There's reason. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so to discover when you're no longer X or Y, that people don't give you time. I found that if you strip the emotion, I found that enlightening, because it tells you something about them, not about you, but about them. And it tells you that relationships for many people, they're
Very
transactional.
transactional. Yes.
They are transactional.
Yes. Yes. Don't
And
get
when
it
you're
twisted.
And when you're not a transactional relationship person, that is a very, very difficult thing to move past. You do, because you learn. But it was a lesson in that season for me. It was a deep lesson in that season for me.
So I have a friend who is in her 40s, you know, and she's definitely heads down, you know, work wise. Really, you know, brilliant woman, hardworking. Just, I have to give her flowers. But again, to your point, not focus on anything else. And what would you be saying to her? Because again, I think coming back to the initial discussion we had at the top of the hour, right? You know, at the age of 40, I felt like I was flying and, you know, nothing in my way. But things happen, right? I mean, what are we saying to women such as my friend or in their late 30s and 40s that have the title, the income, the access that you just talked about, the momentum? What are you saying to them today?
Well, look, I'll be saying different things to them in different capacities,
Okay.
right? As a career coach, I would be saying, internally, be really clear about the path that you want, because people will be talking, as we said at the top of the hour, right? People will be making decisions about you without
That's
consulting
your
you.
input.
So you need to advocate for yourself. You need to be saying, just so you know, I'm really interested in X, Y, and Z, but I'm also open to knowing what you think. So you open up that conversation, right? Because if your manager is not going to open it up, you've got to open it
You
up.
have to do it.
Yeah. So it's your career. You've got to get in the driving seat and not just be the sat nav, right? So you've got to really drive your career internally. So I would absolutely say that to her, because she's got another, you know, decade, like, you know, to still do this thing or more, depending on what she wants to do. So I always say, be clear about what you want, because if you don't ask, you don't get. And be clear about what you're willing to explore. So don't let people put you in a box, because they will if you let them. And I always say, please don't use the year-end conversation, because honestly, year-end conversation, everybody's focused on bonus. Everybody's focused on what's my
Trying to
rate.
get it through.
Forget the year-end conversation. It's a tick box. But mid-year, when nobody's looking for it, that's when you go for it. And then use your organization to think about, how are you developing me? Here are some of the things I would love to experience. Here are some of the things I would love to have exposure to. How can you help me? Yes. So, do you want to do an MBA? Do you want to do what do you want to do? You got to ask the question and get some sponsorship from that level. So as a career coach, internally, those are the conversations I would be encouraging your 40-year-old friend to have.
Basically not letting your career happen to you. Like it sounds like you definitely have to and it sounds very basic, but many of us, well, let me not say many of us, but many people just go through the path, right? I'm a manager, I want to become a senior manager. I'm a senior manager, I want to become that. But they don't have a long-term view of how they want their career to be shaped. And you're saying be very clear about what it is that you're looking to do and what you want out of the organization.
100%.
Yeah.
Be clear and say it. Nobody reads your mind. Say it. Open your mouth and say it. And then that opens a conversation. And that's the piece that I think we all miss. Because actually you may be looking at a particular trajectory and somebody says, but have you thought about X? You may not have thought about it, but it could be something that actually, because somebody's brought it to the table, you're willing to explore. But you have to open the door to have that conversation. So I'm a huge fan of being very, very intentional about conversations on careers. But equally, I'd be telling your friends, start to think about what life do you want to live at 52, 55, 57? And start to plan for it now. I honestly wish somebody had that conversation with me. Nobody did. But because I think there is something about having a plan. Now, we all know that plans can go left, right? But it allows you to know what the direction of travel is. And yes, sometimes there are curves in the road, etc. But you have a true north. You have a North Star. And it allows you to start to plot your North Star. So, when I did this program on transitions, one of the things we talked about is, what is the life you want to live? Right? I'm not talking about the job. I'm not talking about the money. I'm not talking about, how do you want to feel physically? You have to start now, right? You don't wake up one day and start running. You build it up.
Yeah.
You don't wake up
build the
one day and
muscle.
carry 15 kilos. You build it up. It's the same thing. Think about, what's your health? What's the plan for your health? What's the plan for your finances? Right? What's the plan for your skills and your competencies? Right? What is it in your toolkit that you don't have today that is going to take you 2 years to build, 5 years to build? Start building it. We know that how do you eat an elephant, right? In small bite-sized chunks. You keep, and at 40 you've got the time. I had this 6 months when I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. And then Lloyd's happened, and then I started to build from there. But genuinely, if somebody had that conversation with me at 40, I think I'd have been in a very different position when that whole thing happened.
Yes.
I think. Who knows?
Wow. I mean, let me ask this way though, because again, the things that you're saying sound very obvious, but most women, including yourself, and I spoke to you about my situation as well, are not doing that, right? How do you unlearn all the things that we've been taught, which is, go in, perform, keep your head down, don't be too loud, don't be too visible, all of this stuff. How do you unlearn that? I mean, in your case and in my case, we've had to go through experiences that told us, you know what, you can't keep moving this way. But as you said, if you were told at 40, it would be great. How do you unlearn all of these things that you've learned coming up about how to show up at work?
So, and again, one of the things I'm really clear about is we all have different journeys and we all have different paths. and we all learn in different ways. A lot of my learning has come through my lived experience, right? It's not because somebody's told me. It's not necessarily because I've observed people either.
Mhm.
I've observed some people and I've thought, actually, no, that's not for me. But I think there is, in the unlearning, it's just, and genuinely, I'm sharing this because, again, it's been my experience. It's almost, what don't you want?
Okay.
What don't you want? Like, if
Like the woman at the train
that story I
station.
told you at the start, yeah, that for me was, I do not want to be that. I do not want to be that. And that then starts to close certain doors for you. And then you start to think, well, if you don't want that, what do you want? And I know I want to spend lots of time traveling. And I know I want to spend lots of time doing executive coaching because that lights me up. And I know that I want to spend time doing programs for women so that they can learn from lived experience. But actually, there's so much research out there that we don't squeeze the juice out of. And can we squeeze the juice in a really practical way? And so for me, it's less about the unlearning and more about, what are you listening to that is shifting your mindset? What are you spending time on that is building your future state? Those things for me are super important. And the last thing I will say, though, on that is just accepting that there isn't one path to it.
Okay.
There isn't one journey. One of my CEOs recently called me and said, Elsie, what's your number? And I'm like, what do you mean, what's my number? You've got my phone number. He's like, no. What is your number? What's the number? What's the number that would mean that you are comfortable and you don't need to work anymore? And you've thought about those kind of things, but you've never really sat down and said, okay, so what's
Do
that?
the math.
You haven't done the math. I did the math. And it was a big number. And it was a number that means that I'm not ready.
Were you were far away from the number?
I wasn't as far away, but I was far away enough to know that, okay, there's
still have some work to do.
done. But that genuinely, you have to plan your own path. My number will be very different from somebody else's number. And actually, when I've had this conversation with friends of mine, most of their numbers are like 3 times mine.
Wow.
We all have different lifestyles and different needs and different wants. And it's okay for your number to be different from somebody else's. Stay in your lane.
I mean, but this is, again, and I'm glad you've raised this. We won't talk to, I want to talk to you again another day. We'll talk about this because I'm loving this conversation. But I think this is a really important conversation. This conversation about, and there's a huge difference to me between financial security and financial flexibility. You know what I mean? Like, what gives you freedom? Did you say you what did you say? I didn't hear you.
Hear that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I want to plan not just for financial security, I want to plan for financial flexibility. And I think that more and more it's really important for us to not plan for retirement, but a life beyond that. And I think it's what you were saying. What kind of life do you not want? What kind of life do you want? But I think we should have a whole episode about that, Elsie. That's another conversation altogether. Yeah. Okay, so you left, you started your own business. And then I think based on what I heard you say, you realized that you weren't done yet. You weren't ready to fully start that and build that. So you went back to work.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
How long did it take you to go back to work?
So this whole episode happened end of May was when I decided I wasn't going. And I got the offer I actually remember vividly getting the offer because it was on my mum's birthday, 1st of December, and I started in January. But we started the conversations back in October, I want to say, September, October time. So search firm reached out to me about this opportunity. I said no a couple of times. And then the CPO reached out to me directly, and at which point you don't.
You went along.
You have coffee. So I went to be the people director for both the corporate and the institutional and the commercial bank at Lloyds Banking Group. So I started that January 23.
Okay. And so you did that for a couple of years, and then you decided to move on to another opportunity again. What was the reason for the transition again here?
So actually what happened was more that I was the only people director who had front office people director who had two businesses. Everybody else had one CEO, one business. And so my boss decided that she wanted to give each CEO their own people director. And that did not serve me because that was effectively cutting my job in half. I did not want half a job. So we agreed a mutual separation. So I left October last year. And yeah, that was, and look, I'm a huge fan, as you probably have gathered, of if something's not serving me, I'm not doing it.
I'm in awe of this, by the way. No, I'm serious. I don't think you realize how it's not usual. I know you're saying it like, and didn't serve me. I decided to leave, but it's not the norm. And I think it really takes a lot of like certainty about what you bring to the table. And again, I know you said, obviously 10, 15 years versus now, of course, but even at this age, because I think when you hit, your 40s and 50s, the next step is not always very clear from a corporate point of view, right? And so a lot of times there's fear about some of these decisions, but you've always been very grounded in this is not for me. And so I'm not going to live with it.
I
Why are you
don't know.
laughing, Elsie?
I don't.
Ah, this one is masterclass.
Life is short. Life is short. Why spend it doing stuff that doesn't serve you? Anything can happen tomorrow. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. I don't want to be sitting and be miserable in a space. I've done that. I've been miserable in jobs, but I couldn't leave because I was paying school fees and we were, and I'm, I can't do that to myself anymore.
Yeah.
I can't. I just can't do that to myself anymore. So, look, and my own needs are very, my needs are quite minimal. So I'm good. And look, and I left, and it was what was interesting about the leaving was that I somehow knew that was never a long-term gig for me.
Sure.
It was a very different cultural environment from City. My language always had to be softened. I was rebuilding my ecosystem. I was building my social capital. And honestly, for being there less than 3 years, and I think I did all of those things and I did them well. And those are the things that you don't plan for when you're going into a new role, but those are the things that you absolutely have to do. But look, it served me in the time I was there, and I'm no longer there. And like the fractional CPO role I'm doing came from somebody who I'd worked with at City decades ago. He'd been on one of the development programs that I was running, and he literally phoned me up in January this year and said, "Oh, Elsie, do you think Lloyds would let you do some fractional work for us?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm no longer at Lloyds." He said, "Can I call you?" I'm like, "Totally." We had a conversation. That was it. He's the founder of a tech startup. I'm super excited about what they're doing. I literally said, I want to talk to everybody before I join. And I did over the space of 2 days. I spoke to every single person, and here I am. And I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. I'm doing things I did 25 years ago. I'm doing things I have never done before and everything in between. And I love it.
New industry.
New
So
industry, startup. I mean,
nice.
completely greenfield. Claude and I are besties right now.
What is the bestie?
Claude is my bestie. So, I'm really enjoying it. Really enjoying it.
Oh my goodness. Elsie, you've had multiple chapters. I mean, and I'm really excited to hear about this latest chapter. What has that taught you about? I mean, let me tell you the lesson I'm taking away from our conversation. We started off, looking to have a conversation about, what your next chapter, should look like and what you should plan for. I think one of the big lessons coming out of this is just around conviction. I'm serious, like conviction. This has been a lesson for me. But I think for what I wanted to hear from you is through your ambitions, through the work you're doing in terms of coaching, and I think you're still doing some of that. You're going to be coaching me next, by the way. No, I'm serious. I want to have a discussion. But what has that taught you about ambition and what it actually asks of you, And also just in terms of, and I think that the answer is a bit obvious from all the things you've talked about, but let's just sort of put it out there. What are the things that have become more important to you in your fees that you really never gave thought to in your 30s?
What does it taught me about ambition? There is genuinely, I believe that there is a season for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So for people listening to this who will be at their early career stages, do the work, be excellent at your craft, because actually that creates a really strong foundation for you. And as you build, find your sponsors, because they will be the ones who open the gates for those ambitions to be realized for you. And actually, for those of us, be the sponsors, right? Because we can. We have agency. I have such huge social capital that I deploy for people left, right, and center. And I'll do it because it costs me a phone call, an email, a WhatsApp connection, and I'm good because somebody did that for me. And I'm so willing to do that for people. But one of the things I will say, because we've been fed this fallacy of you can have it all, that is a lie. There is a price to pay at every single point. There is a price to be paid, whether that's you're working, 16-hour days and you barely have time to think for yourself at some point. That happens. Whether it is, I'm going to be on a plane for the next 3 weeks. So, Mr. Barrister, you are holding the fort for the next 2 weeks and you figure it out. There is always a price to pay. So let's stop with this false narrative of, yeah, you can have it all. It's a lie. You can have some of it at different points in time, but there is a season for everything. On ambition, I will say that transparently and with no regrets. What's important to me now, honestly, freedom to do the work that really matters to me, freedom to do work that is meaningful. So when I put out a coaching program and I say I only want 12 participants, I am intentional about that. Could I make more money if I had 20 participants? Of course. I don't want 20 people. I want 12 people to leave a room with an experience that stays with them. That is what I want. I don't need to do stuff just because, it gives me X more. We're all going to finish this money here. We are. It's all here. We're going to finish it. So, I'm here for that. But freedom and the ability to dictate how you spend your time, I genuinely think that's priceless. I genuinely, I fully believe that is priceless.
You're making me think as we talk. I don't even know what to ask you anymore.
Oh, well, we've talked for nearly 2 hours. I think we're good.
All right. We're going to have the closing question now.
Okay.
Okay. And this is the last question. And I know you said you don't want to give advice, but I'm going to ask you anyway, which is, what would you have done differently at 40?
Oh, wow.
Okay. And based on that, for the 40-year-old listening to this episode, what should they be thinking about today? And that's my last question, Elsie. I'm not going to ask you anything else after this.
I would plan more. I would be far more intentional about planning. And I mean that in every sphere. I mean that planning from a career perspective. I think I did a relatively good job of that, you
Did a
know, but
great job.
I would have done more of it. Yes. I would plan more financially. Absolutely. More investing, just being more intentional around investing. That new term that everybody's banding around, generational wealth, just annoys me
I
slightly.
really detest this word, by the way.
It
really detest it.
It does something to my brain, but
It's triggering.
Thank you. That's the word. That is the word. It triggers me every time. But anyway, but I would plan more
For your financial freedom.
Thank you. That's what I would do. But also, and this is a lesson that I've learned in the last couple of years, I would really think about what is in my toolkit that I need for me. What do I need in my toolkit? I will be far more and I think I'm quite an intentional person.
You are.
But I would be far more intentional about how do I build for next? I've had to do it in the last 2 years, but if I had more time, I would have done so much more around it. I think those are the 3 things I would do. But please, please, please enjoy the journey. I wish somebody had told me to enjoy. I didn't learn to enjoy work travel until very, very late in my career.
You're a good girl. My meeting's on Tuesday. I'm coming in on Monday night and I'm leaving on Wednesday morning. This kind of thing.
You're leaving? No, I'm finishing Friday night. I'm getting on a plane on Friday night from New York. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm not even, and I learned in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. No. The meetings finish on Friday. I'm going to spend the weekend in New York. I'm going to spend the weekend in dinner. I'm going to do. I didn't do that. Please do that. Please do that. Enjoy the journey.
Madam Elsie Akinsanya. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Listen, I mean, I know I said at the start that we've known each other since we're 11, but I don't know this side of you. And it has just been really amazing just to see your integrity, your compassion, you're sort of like the North Star you talked about, how clear, what is important to you guides your decisions, and honestly, respect. Because I think I'm going to keep telling you that is not something that you see every day. So thank you for sharing with our listeners today. We are going to be having a conversation about financial freedom. You know that for sure.
Yes, I do know that. Thank you for having me.
Much. No, thank you. Thank you everyone for listening. And please look up Elsie on LinkedIn. What's the name of your business again, please? Because we're coming to you for coaching.
Yep, ENAHR. I do coaching for mid-career to senior women. So I'm, doing that.
We are coming your way. I'm first in line.
I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you for listening to the Don't Let the Smile Fool You podcast. I hope you found it really, really interesting. But more importantly, I hope you're still smiling. See you soon.